Welcome back to the 40 Acres Football Podcast. Once again, joined alongside me is Robert Gonsolin and Joseph Duffy. Not a whole lot to talk about when it comes to Texas football, but there's a lot to talk about in the college football landscape. And there's still some Texas storylines that we'll get to a little bit later. But I think what we're going to start off with is the way that national championship game played out. I know me personally, I was not the most excited for the game. Was not my favorite matchup in the world, but overall ended up being a solid game. Notre Dame made a run towards the end, had a chance to get a stop and get the ball back, was unable to do so, and then inevitably Ohio State took it away. So, what were your thoughts both on the matchup, the way the game played out, and then how ratings have been coming out? Obviously, it was not as much of a it wasn't watched as heavily as Michigan and Washington last year. So just give me your thoughts on some of those main topics.
Yeah, I thought the game started out like it was going to be an absolute shootout. A lot of scoring, back and forth the whole four quarters, and just really no accurate predictions in the first quarter about who would win the game because most people thought Ohio State would win before the game even started. But when people saw the way Notre Dame drove downfield so efficiently and wasted so much, not efficiently, but wasted so much time off the clock, but in doing so, looked so powerful. I thought that the game would just go back and forth because Notre Dame would be able to do that all game long. That's not how the game ended up. So I feel like the first quarter kind of fooled college football fans like me a little bit. But I think people in terms of ratings, it may not have been as high as it has been in other years because I think when people are looking at a college football national championship game, they're looking for a game with one college football blue blood like Ohio State or like Georgia. They're looking for one of those teams taking on a team that's in the game that's not one of them. So like TCU, for instance, or Washington, for instance. And when you have a matchup like that, a lot of people will tune in knowing that the non-blue blood or underdog team may not win, but it's exciting to see them play on such a high stage and actually have that chance. Meanwhile, put it into perspective in the game that we saw just a few nights ago, we had two blue bloods play, and Notre Dame and Ohio State kind of having somewhat of a rivalry. They haven't played too much in the past, but having somewhat of a rivalry. It's a matchup that people have seen twice already before this past Monday night. They saw it in 2022 and 2023. So I just think that people will tune in for a huge blue blood matchup for the college football playoff national championship, but not when it's teams who have played very recently. So maybe if you took Ohio State, a team from, the Midwest, and then you took a team like, well, I would say USC because but they're in the Big Ten with them. So maybe if you took Ohio State and paired them with, you know, an Alabama team, or you paired Ohio State with LSU, another, college football elite program, that would be an elite pairing where I would see the viewership really skyrocket, I think, in my opinion. But given that Notre Dame and Ohio State, two elite football programs that have kind of had played each other recently, have had history that's not too far long ago, I think that it served for a national championship that not as many people were inclined to watch.
Yeah, I mean, similar to what Robert was saying, these teams have a little bit of history, not too crazy. Mainly, I mean, the history is just to those who were in that region, in the Midwest. But, I think this is the fault of college football for not finding a way to promote this more. I think it's just a little bit stretched out, too. The college football playoff, it was pretty long. And the fact that you run into the Titan that is the NFL. you're not really helping yourself out a lot. And also placing the game on a Monday. I can't believe we still do this in 2025, placing the national championship between two of the most historic programs in college football history on a Monday. I mean, you set yourself up there as well. And maybe in the future they can find a way to push um, the college football season back to possibly have the national championship earlier in January. I don't know how they could do it. Maybe like start the college football season in late July, maybe early August. Who knows? But when you run into the NFL playoffs, you're gonna find a way to get bit. And you saw how the Cotton Bowl and also was it the Peach Bowl? Let me see, the Cotton Bowl. Yeah, the Peach Bowl, also where Penn State and Notre Dame were playing. That ran into the NFL playoffs as well. Those ratings were not necessarily great as well either. And those were two historic games as well between Texas and Ohio State and Penn State and Notre Dame, and still found a way to not have successful ratings. As far as the game was concerned, I thought it was a much better national championship than we've had in the past 4 or 5 so years. And I thought, like what Robert was saying, it was going to be a shootout because, Riley Leonard had a very successful drive to start off the game for the Fighting Irish. I thought we were about to get a big time, back and forth game. And then Ohio State was able to respond right after that possession. But Ohio State was just well prepared. Chip Kelly called a great game. You saw this great rush attack yet again by Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson. 214 yards total rushing as an attack. 9 of 12 on third down. This team just was on fire, and there's nobody happier than Ryan Day. I mean, you can see it after every touchdown. He's like, I'm keeping my job. I'm keeping my job. Pacing the sidelines every time someone broke off a big run like Judkins or Henderson. Every single touchdown, his smile got bigger because that man almost got ran out of town against Michigan. He was this close. He was the biggest enemy in the state of Ohio.
And we were
So,
all on record saying that it could be his job if he
oh
didn't win
man.
a national championship game.
And
We've
I
been
wasn't
on this
thinking they were actually gonna
absolutely.
do it, man. Like, come on, like that dude's team was heating up for him. They played. It shows how much they care for their coach and how much they have their back. That they're willing to play hard still, even after that Michigan game. So, firstly, the Monday setting, I wish they can change that for college football playoff promotion. But overall solid game. I don't really like either of these teams. I'm just showing my bias, obviously, but Ohio State's a well-deserved champion, but Ryan Day's the happiest guy in the room for sure.
I would say first off, credit to Ohio State for winning the national championship on Monday night and playing such a great game. Ryan Day put a lot of pieces together with that team, whether it's through recruiting Jeremiah Smith or going to the transfer portal and getting Will Howard and Quinshon Judkins. Credit to them, they played a great game. I will say, it's interesting because Ryan Day, when he was just that close to losing his job after the Michigan game we might have been on. I could have been. I can't remember exactly what my take was back when we were filming this podcast during after that game. But Ohio State, $20 million roster. That's not to say how why that's not to attest to their performance in the national championship game. Played a great game. They deserve it all that they won. I'm saying with the money they have though they could obviously go out and get any coach they want. This is just talking about the coaching staff. With that money they have, they could go out and get any coach they want. But honestly, in my opinion, even though you're losing to Michigan 3 or 4 times in a row, I get it. That's your rivalry game. I get it. But who else? And I understand you have the money. But who else are you going to hire besides Ryan Day that's going to bring you all that success? I know there are plenty of coaches in college football who are tremendous and they can really bring teams to a high deal of success. But I mean, Ryan Day is has been Ohio State's head coach and has brought them to multiple college football playoffs. Who are you going to hire to be the head? Who else would you have hired to be the head coach at Ohio State and expect to be better than where Ryan Day was taking them at the moment he got fired. I mean, he was still taking them to a college football playoff appearance. If you hire the next best coach, are y'all going to be at that? Are y'all going to be better? Are y'all going to be at that exact same spot right away? Or do you take a step back a little bit and then get better over the course of the next 4 seasons? Who are you going to hire? And with that being said, I feel like, keeping Ryan Day, yeah, it ended up being the right choice for them. They won a national championship and they let things take its course and he brought them to the top of college football.
Yeah, I mean, if you if you get rid of him, it's definitely tough to say that you're going to find a guy that's going to bring you right back to the college football playoff, to the national championship. Uh, at the same time, I do think Ohio State's going to have success with whoever is their coach. They're always going to be a recruiting powerhouse. They have the money, they have the donors. But Ryan Day got the monkey off his back now, and now he's playing with house money for the next few years. He can really coach with no pressure to get that job done again. And that's a scary thing to say because you have one of the top programs with a coach that has been not the issue, but the guy that hasn't been able to get them over that hump. And now he doesn't have the pressure of trying to win a national title. So now he can go in freely and coach free without the pressure of the athletic director breathing down his neck. And that's a scary sight for college football fans. I will say I agree with Joe a lot that the ratings have everything to do with the playoff schedule and nothing to do with the teams, the game, etc. The playoff schedule is way too drawn out, like way too drawn out. You play the first round game, then you play the second round game, which could be like a week and a half later, depending on when New Year's Day is, because they want to get those games done on New Year's Day, which, in my opinion, call it the New Year's Six Bowl. I don't care, but the games don't need to be on New Year's Day. Like we don't need that. So you're playing those games like a week and a half later, and then the following games are what? Then you can't play that following Saturday if you're playing on a Thursday or a Wednesday. So then you're playing 8 or 9 days later on a Saturday or a Friday, whenever they make that bowl game. And then the national championship is on a Monday night. Like nobody wants to travel to a game over the weekend and then have to miss days of work to watch the national championship. Hold it on a Saturday. It's way easier to get off of work on a Friday. You fly out, you watch the game on a Saturday, you come back on Sunday, maybe you take work off Monday. It makes everything so much easier. And luckily, it was announced that the college football like scheduling committee is going to meet with the NFL to try and resolve some of the headbutting between the two. So maybe we'll start to see more of that. The NFL might move off of Saturdays later in the season. Maybe college football decides they're going to play their games more on Friday for the playoff. But regardless, those games just need to be week after week after week on the same day so that the timeline is the same because the interest just slowly falls off when you have to wait a week and a half and then, nearly 2 weeks for the semifinal and then the national championship. To me, it's not exciting. It didn't get me excited for it. And you watch those NFL games, you got 3 or 4 games on. That's way more exciting, in my opinion, than waiting around for the final game of the season between Notre Dame and Ohio State. Um, so I think college football has a little bit to work with in terms of scheduling, but I think the first 12 team playoff overall was a success. I think we got some solid matchups. There needs to be a little bit of reseeding, but I think we'll see how it plays out next year, and that could kind of change some of that as well. Um, but this is set up for Arch Manning now, who gets his first game in Columbus, Ohio, where he's going to have to take on the Ohio State Buckeyes. August 30th, mark your calendars. It's not been determined that it'll be a night game or a primetime game. There's one of two scenarios. It's either going to be the big noon game with Fox because Ohio State's always in that time slot, or it's going to be the primetime game on ESPN. So let's segue over into the Arch era, baby, because that game is exciting. A lot of new faces are going to be on both squads. Each team has lost NFL caliber guys, a couple guys to the transfer portal. Early thoughts and predictions for that game. Go ahead and give them to me.
Yeah, that's gonna be a crazy game already. Texas is losing a lot, and I know it'll be Arch's first. People, not his first true start, but people will consider it as Arch's first, you know, real start at quarterback, right? I mean, his first start was ULM, but this is the first time Arch is taking over as it is his team. And while people may say that, I do think Arch is ready because he's just played so much already and he's just much older than the quarterback that'll be starting on the other side of the football. So I think that Arch, I think oh, is Arch gonna be ready? He's not ready. He's too young. It's his first time starting. Okay, he's had 2 years to rest now, 2 years to develop. That time will have passed. He has a whole off season coming up this summer. So yes, I think Texas is losing a lot, and they're gonna have to manage around that, and that's gonna show when they open up against the reigning national champions. It's not gonna be the same reigning national champions as Texas faced when they played Michigan. Ohio State's still going to have a lot more talent than Michigan did at the time the Horns played them. But I think Arch will be ready. He's had his time to develop. He has the elusiveness of a quarterback that can step up in the pocket and run outside of it, and he's working better on his throwing motions. Like he's not afraid to throw the deep ball. So I think at the quarterback position, Texas will be fine, but it's where Texas can make up for the pieces they've lost, Um, receiver positions. There's a lot of new guys coming in. You have Wingo and Moore taking on kind of those leadership roles, but then you have Jaime French coming in, and at tight end, Gunnar Helma's gone. They didn't use Nye Black very much. He's gone to the portal and he's at A&M, I believe now. Juan Davis is done. He's graduated. So you have what seems to be Jordan Washington from Langham Creek coming in and possibly taking that starting role. You have a new backfield with a running back who hasn't played in a whole year in CJ Baxter. So it just comes to say I don't want to just read off all these new players, but you have this whole entire new offense who probably hasn't played together as a unit, hasn't played together much against a team that is also losing a lot, but I don't think they're losing near. I could be wrong. Someone may have to fact check me on this. I don't think they're losing nearly as much as Michigan did, but I do think that Texas will be prepared.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's Arch Manning time. I couldn't be happier. And the thing is, the pressure is going to be turned to 100. There's not going to be any, grace, I think, really from a lot of Texans fans because they expect uh, what he can bring to the table because of his last name. He's been hyped for going on 3, 4 years now, ever since his high school days in Louisiana. Albeit if you want to, consider that he didn't go against crazy competition in high school, I don't care. Either way, he still was highly rated. He had great highlights. He's going to a premier university, and he sat behind. Uh, I mean, he really has done an interesting thing in this era of sitting behind a quarterback in Quinn Ewers for 2 years when he could have been balling out for over 2 years right now in another team. So I do commend him on that. That's really unselfish, and it shows that he's committed to this franchise or this team, I should say. But Steve Sarkisian is really not going to have any excuses next year, and you can see the difference in play styles as soon as when Arch would come in and check into the game. Obviously, more of a dual threat, bigger threat to his legs, but also I would say he's more accurate downfield as well. Every time we saw him check in, it felt like he was taking a shot deep and with more accuracy than Quinn Ewers. And so when you have these receivers who are speedy, say in Ryan Wingo or Jaime French or in DeAndre Moore, who is a good deep threat as well, or even I don't know if Niblett's going to have much play time next year. I don't know if he's still here as it stands or if he will be here next year. But he'll have some solid weapons around him, and I'm never going to question who will be around here for the Longhorns offense. It may look bleak sometimes after a season is over and guys declare and they have to find a way to get transfers in. But after a while, it starts to look more clear towards late July and early August. And it always seems to be a pretty solid set of receivers. And you can see what the theme is usually around these receivers in the Sarkisian era. Not usually the tallest of guys. You're not going to have any big power receivers or like 6'4", 6'5". Usually these receivers that are surrounding the Texas offense are at max 6'2", 6'3", have decent speed, and are occasionally good for the deep threat. And so we've seen this with Matthew Golden again. We've seen it by Xavier Worthy, who just got drafted last year. And we've seen it with A.D. Mitchell, who we can hope blossom to another great receiver in the NFL with the Colts. So as far as receivers concerned, I'm not worried at all. I believe this offense will always make it work. And run game as well. I believe it'll also make it work as well with C.J. Baxter and maybe Christian Clark in the future at the helm, finally getting their opportunities to make it uh, to have those RB1 and RB2 positions after having such injury in these past two seasons. Hopefully, they can have that opportunity to blossom as well. I think there's really no excuses for this offense at all. And Steve Sarkisian, along with Arch Manning, will have the pressure turn to 100. As far as the defense, of course, they lost a few names too, but Michael Taft being a leader is a big thing for this defense for Pete Kwiatkowski. And Anthony Hill is still there. And we have a lot of names that are still of significance for this defense as well. So Steve Sarkisian's pressure definitely he's on the hot seat obviously, but having all this talent still here in Texas and having only one guy, I believe, lost to the portal says a lot about this team. And the pressure is going to be turned to 100 for him.
Yeah, it should be a great game. Both teams losing a lot of pieces, but both teams have top quarterback recruits. Um, for the Buckeyes, they still have Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate, um, which you look at historically, quarterbacks that get to play with elite wide receivers, they figure it out. And that's exactly what I believe Julian, is it Sayin is gonna have for Ohio State next season. So that's going to be exciting. Texas sort of has that game plan. For Texas, though, I think keeping Trey Moore around is huge. You still have Trey Moore, Colin Simmons, Anthony Hill in that edge linebacker area. That is really, really a key piece that stays around on the defense. And then, like Joe said, you keep Michael Taft, who's a leader, who knows the culture. He's sticking around for another year. I think the defense is going to be just as good. I think the pass rush is going to be even better. Colin Simmons was only a freshman this year, as crazy as it sounds. He's gonna be a stud next season, and you're gonna have to switch up your game plan a little bit. I think you're gonna have to bring a little bit more pressure. And yeah, Trey Moore sticking around is huge. Another leader for the defense that can get to the quarterback. He really came on towards the end of the season. So I think he's a mismatch for opposing defenses as well. You're going to have Colton Vashek that we believe will be playing more next season. So Texas still has all the pieces to win a national championship, in my opinion. Obviously, they have the Prince, Arch Manning, to lead them at the helm there. So that game, can't make a score prediction. We don't know what the rosters are really going to look like, but it's going to be bumping in Columbus, Ohio. And it's going to be one of those games that could be an instant classic. You're coming off a national championship. It's a rematch of last season, but with new faces. And I think that's going to be one of the games of the year. So with that said, um, let's go ahead and segue over to one thing Robert wanted to talk about, told us earlier this week was, do we need to make any changes to the college football playoff? Um, Suggested a 14-team playoff. In my opinion, I don't think it's necessary. I think we need to keep the college football playoff as it is. I was a big proponent of the 14 playoff. Didn't think we needed to change it to 12. I just think when you make so many changes year after year that it gets kind of frustrating for fans. It's a new thing every single year. It's hard to keep up with. And I don't think we need to keep expanding it. I don't think more teams need to keep getting a chance to win a national championship if you can't perform in the regular season. And I thought 12 was a little bit excessive. I thought a 16 playoff would have been perfect with the first two teams getting a bye, like what the NFL used to do when six teams made it on the AFC or the NFC side. Um, but Robert, tell us a little bit more about this 14 team playoff, kind of how you see it shaking out.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't want to throw anyone off here by wanting to talk about it, but me personally, I think the 12-team playoff is enough. I think with the 14 playoff, I'm not sure exactly how that would work. Maybe only two teams get the bye, and two of those teams actually play in the first round. But I feel like in college football, there are about 5 or 6 teams that can legitimately win the national championship. I don't think there are 12 teams that can actually win the national championship that have the caliber to do so. Because, you know, the AP ranked 1 and 2 and 3 team are going to still be a lot better than the AP ranked 10, 11, and 12 team. But needless to say, I think that a 12-team playoff is enough. I actually thought that the 4 team was a little small because it's like you play one round and then it's not even a playoff anymore. It's just a national championship game. It's just like 4 teams I just thought that was a little that wasn't enough for me, you know. It's exciting, it's cool, but I just when I think of playoffs or a tournament, I think of at least 8 teams in there, 12 teams in there. So I think 12 is enough. 14's kind of a lot, but 14 is a lot. I don't think you need to go there. But it's also interesting because when people say, okay, 14 teams, that's way too much, an argument they could use is that, well, there's 134 teams in the FBS. 14 teams 14 teams is is that uh, I'm not trying to do quick math. Is that a little over 10% of if little over 10%, 13, yeah, almost around 10% of of the entire college football landscape is making it to the playoffs. That's still a pretty small number, but I think it's way too much just because of the discrepancy in talent amongst the top teams in the country versus, teams 10 through 14. But also, I just feel like with the college football playoffs, I do think the schedule is drawn out, like you were saying, Justin. I think what the committee could do is maybe on that bowl season always starts on a Saturday. The playoffs don't, but the first few bowls always start on a Saturday. Why not move the first round over to that first Saturday of bowl season to begin with? That already pushes things up by a whole week. So that takes 1 week off the schedule. You start you start the playoffs in that first weekend of bowl season, and then you play all the way through. Maybe you keep a week in between games. The reason why I think that they've wanted to play these big time bowl games on New Year's Day, it's not a playoff thing. I think it's just a college football pageantry thing. People have historically wanted to wake up on New Year's Day and watch the Rose Bowl in that afternoon. I don't know how long the Sugar Bowl's been played that night or the Peach Bowl's been played that midday, but I think that with the changing college football playoff landscape and the schedule, there are a lot of things that the playoffs are trying to preserve within college football while also having their landscape. And it's getting very, very conflicted right now because now you have a whole schedule that's drawn out about a month and a little over a month. So it's interesting, but I think 12 is the way to go. Just push it up 1 week.
Yeah, I mean, like if they were to move it to 14 I don't know if the report was last year. They said they wanted to make it 14 by like 2026 with, the eventual goal, a rumor was eventual goal is 16 in the future, which like, come on. I mean, if you're gonna make all the money you want to, like you're gonna run to the schedule at some point of the NFL. And so I don't know how they're gonna try to hide from it, especially if they were to go to 14. But I will say Josh Pate had a good point about how it feels like with this playoff, they sometimes want to make it so much about finding that Cinderella who can make that run, similar to the NCAA and the March Madness tournament. You're not going to get that in college football. I mean, he even had a great team in Boise State, Ashton Jeanty, and his great squad, the Broncos, getting a bye, winning a Mountain West championship, getting a bye, but then getting their butts handed to them in the Fiesta Bowl by Penn State. And we all thought, maybe this team could have a chance. Who thought that Ashton Jeanty held his lowest total of like 103 or 104 rush yards of the season, still found a way to not really compete in that game. The reality is like what Josh Pate was saying, uh, it, the winners of this tournament really are just going to be teams that are underwhelming in the regular season or underperforming and find a way to run the table. And you saw that with Ohio State. You're not about to have some 8 seed, 9 seed Tulane team or some 10 seed, I don't know, some team from like a group of five conference that's going to find a way to win this national championship. It's going to be a team likely from Power Four, that was underwhelming in the regular season and got hot like Ohio State. So it feels like sometimes this college football playoff, they're trying to find that Cinderella by giving people more opportunities and trying to add more teams. But obviously, it's just, trying to make the most money, which I understand, but it's ridiculous and trying to, expand the schedule because the last regular season game, are we going on like 2 months with that? Was it 2 months since the last regular season game? I mean,
Yeah.
how drawn out was this playoff? And like Robert was saying, possibly they were to start it on that Saturday along with the rest of the bowl season. I can understand that, but I know they want to maximize the profits. They're going to try to, isolate it in a college football schedule to not have it compete against other games. And also for the bowl games to also make money as well that aren't as popular too. So I don't know what they're gonna do with this. To be honest, I think 12 is perfect. I hope they would stay there, but as it stands, maybe they could just fix seating issues. I thought it was fair, to be honest. I know it sounds weird to say Boise State deserved to bye, but like, I mean, they won their conference. I think if you win your conference, like the NFL, if you win your division, you deserve to get the higher seed. I believe in that. Like, I'll take that till I die. They're trying to, find a way to say it should be up to a committee where you should be seated, even if you were to win or lose your conference. A team that did not win their conference should still be ranked ahead of you. I don't necessarily agree with that. I believe if you win your conference, you should have the right to have higher seating. But other than that, I think the 12 team model is the max it should be.
Agreed. Yeah. If I agree with the sentiment that if you win your conference, you should get a bye. I really don't think we need to change that right now. I think if you have the same system for 2 or 3 years and you're still running into those issues where the group of five team has gotten blown out every single season, then you can look at that. But I think after one season, trying to make some tweaks, trying to make some adjustments, it's a little premature. And like you said, you expand it to 14 teams. I mean, I think you're already sort of going to have this in the 12 team. You expand it to 14 teams, you're just going to have the blue bloods that get a second chance get in. And like you said, Joe, they're going to run the table, they're going to get hot. And it's I think it's fine for the sport. I don't mind it a whole lot if you have a one or two loss Georgia team and they get into the playoffs and they run the table. They got a solid squad. Kirby Smart figures it out. I think that's going to happen quite a bit. So I don't know. I think the 12 team is fine. I think the system is fine. I think if you change it too much too early, there's going to be no consistency. I think you have to stick with some sort of consistency, especially when the playoff just got changed to 12 teams. So I like keeping it at 12. I don't want to expand. I don't really want to adjust it a whole lot. Um, But that's all up to the committee. They're going to change it. It's just the way college football is going. It's going to change every 2 or 3 years, whether it's reseeding, whether it's adding teams to the playoff. They want to keep adjusting their bottom line. They want to keep making money. So that's what we're going to see.
I do want to talk about this seeding format of the playoffs that y'all had mentioned. Y'all said if you win your conference championship, you get a bye automatically. I don't necessarily agree with that. I agree with that, if you win the Big Ten, this shouldn't be an exact rule, but like I agree that like in theory, if you win the Big Ten or if you win the SEC, you should get a bye. I mean, those are the two best conferences in college football. You should get a bye. That shouldn't be a written rule, but the written rule is like four of the best five conference champions get the bye. And I truly think that in this first year, the 12 team playoff, that didn't reflect the seeding very accurately. So I just Oregon and Georgia win the Big Ten and the SEC. Sure, they get seeds one and two. Yeah, I would agree with that, man. They won the two best conferences in college football. They get seeds one and two. But I think that a lot of people were banking on this 12 team playoff format having the SEC, Big Ten, ACC, and Big 12 as seeds one through four in no particular order. Well, that didn't happen. The Mountain West champion was ranked higher than the ACC champion, and Boise State got the bye. But it just comes to say that, you have all these first round teams beating all those bye teams when they get to the second round because, on paper, those are teams that lost their conference championship game, like Texas or Penn State. Or, Notre Dame, they don't play in the conference, but they clearly played to that high caliber all season long. So I think that the teams that get a bye should be just the four outright best teams. If you win your conference championship, you should be able to automatically get into the playoffs. Just doesn't mean you should get a bye. And so for instance, you win the SEC, you win the Big 12. That was Oregon and Georgia. They should have gotten buys, and they did. But seeds three and four, maybe that could have been any combination of Texas and Notre Dame, Penn State and Notre Dame and Texas. But I didn't think it had to be Arizona State and Boise State. Arizona State played a great game against Texas and almost beat them. They did. They truly did almost beat them. They were a great team. But before the playoffs started, I, I, I I don't think you could make a huge argument why Arizona State should have gotten the bye over Texas or Notre Dame or Penn State. They should have been in the playoffs. Yes, they should have been. I don't know if Boise State or Arizona State should have gotten the bye. And so I think that it should be the four best outright teams. And that way, the further you get into the playoffs, it's not going to be seven seed versus eight seed or nine seed versus six seed in the final four. It's going to be set up like one versus the four seed, the two versus the three seed. And we want to see upsets, but with the way brackets are set up, they should be seeded in a way where the best team plays the worst team, so on and so forth, all the way to what is it, six versus seven? But that's my spiel.
I, I I just think, the best teams are going to end up winning in the playoff regardless. I think that's what we saw this year. Like, Oregon, was it completely fair that they had to play Ohio State in the second round? Probably not. But Ohio State was clearly the better team once they got to the second round. Was was it ideal that Penn State didn't get a bye after such a fantastic season, and Boise State gets the bye? Probably not. But then Penn State went in there and they took care of business anyway. I just think the teams that are going to take care of business will do it regardless of seeding. And I think a team like Arizona State, they had a fantastic season, won the Big 12, while some other conferences, ACC, didn't, have a dominant powerhouse at the top of their conference. And I think they deserved that bye. It was the best chance that they had even as an underdog to win a game and get, to that semifinal round. And I just think if you keep trying to change college football, you run into the problem that the NBA is having right now. We're trying to fix the game when I think if you just give it some consistency, the ratings will come and it'll fix itself. We'll get those good matchups that we want. Even in the 14 playoff, you had blowouts every single season. You had games that probably weren't fair. This team had a great season. Alabama squeaked in at the number 4 seed, and then Alabama takes care of business in round one. So in my opinion, if you keep trying to change it, you end up just running out of consistency. You're trying to make the games the most fair, when in reality, the best team is going to win at the end of the day, regardless.
I mean, I like that point, and you saw it really in SMU Penn State. I mean, I thought SMU had a chance. I came in there thinking, Penn State, James Franklin. I mean, we know what these guys do in the postseason, and they ended up having a pretty solid run in the playoff, in the debut of the playoffs. So it really is just college football is a different animal than college baseball, than college basketball. We have seen in college baseball, literally Coastal Carolina winning a national championship. We've seen great teams like FAU and San Diego State making it to the Final Four in college basketball. Teams of that caliber in college football have zero chance. I mean, literally, there is no chance of a Cinderella. So I do understand what Robert is saying, like just, cut the BS, give the best teams the highest seeding. But I think that'll be a slippery slope yet again, because you're going to leave it in the hands of a committee that are going to try to, screw over teams that could arguably be ranked higher than a Big Ten or SEC team, and they're gonna find a way to have their back against the wall. But at the same time, Goose is saying if you're a good team, you'll find a way. You'll find a way to compete and come out there with the win. I just don't know what's gonna happen in the future. I thought this was a solid pool, honestly, for the debut of the 12-team playoff. Yeah, a little bit of parity, a lot of different teams that we would have never seen really in another college football playoff year, such as teams as Penn State, or group of five teams such as Boise State, or even an SMU that I know Brett Yormark wishes was in the Big 12 now. Without a doubt, he wishes was in the Big 12, paying their players $40,000 each, and finding a way to represent the state of Texas in the Atlantic Coast Conference somehow. Still annoyed by that, but Clemson found a way to sneak in after a while, after beating SMU in the ACC championship. I just think that in the future, they can find a way to fix scheduling with this 12-team playoff. I hope they don't expand, but it looks like they probably will in 2026 with 14. Find a way just to fix the scheduling. I do like Robert's suggestion of, possibly moving it up a week, but, it'd be hard to, compete without, isolating games. I just think this 12-team playoff overall was a success. I like the first round stages for sure. I thought that was a pretty neat perk, because FCS ball has been doing that model for years of hosting playoff games in college football, which I thought was pretty neat. So overall, I don't know what else to tweak, but potential seeding in the future, like Robert was saying. But I think 12-team is fine.
Yeah, I agree, but I think, Robert, you make good points. I think the best four is, regardless, I think the best teams are going to win. And whatever tweaks are made, we'll kind of see where those chips fall. I bet we're going to get some talk about that this offseason. Really quick before we go, Texas has a ton of players entering the draft. What are the chances Texas breaks the NFL draft record for players from one school? I don't think it's very high. I don't think Gavin Holmes is going to get drafted. I don't think David Benda has a great shot at getting drafted. I don't think Maurice Blackwell has a chance at getting drafted. So that makes the 17 guys that have entered the draft for Texas, if those three don't get drafted, it would be 14, which is one shy of the record being 15. So, is there a chance? Tell me if there's a chance.
Does I don't I don't think so. I don't think they do. But those three players you named, great players, but I don't know if they actually get drafted. does we didn't really see him play, but he declared, and I think he has the resume and the film from the previous schools he played at. Does Velton Gardner get drafted? Because that could really affect whether Texas gets the record or not.
That's a good question. That I really don't know. He'd be a late round pick.
Because if he gets drafted, that could really for Texas football, that could be a game changer in setting the record. I mean, I was really I think I saw people talk about this before players like Jaden Blue even declared, and the fact that Jaden Blue did declare, it definitely helps Texas's case in terms of can they beat the record because those were predictions of from Texas would get drafted before Blue was even thinking about going to the draft. That's when we thought he could go to the portal or stay with the team one more year. But Quinn Ewers and Jaden Blue going to the draft really helped Texas in terms of could they beat the record. But Joe, I'll let you go. But I mean, we could go through all these players in just a sec. But yeah, Joe, what do you have to say?
Well, you talk about an embarrassment of riches. It felt like a few years ago, Texas football can never really get out of the hole they buried themselves in after a disappointing loss in Ames. Um, getting embarrassed when when Bo Davis was ranting on the bus after guys laughing after not taking the loss seriously, and that video circulated all around Longhorn Nation. It seemed like this team was never going to really find a way to, turn the page, and they couldn't get a first round pick to save their life for a long time. Now you're debating if this team can break the draft record. I mean, what a turnaround for Steve Sarkisian. Overall, us having this conversation is a success for the Texas Longhorns in college football. They did finalize having the number one rankings for recruiting, which is good news also for Steve Sarkisian. And also, we talked about in the past having um, only one guy transfer, I believe, total. Only one guy leave the program. So it talks about the security that the front office, can't believe I'm saying that in college football, the front office and GM have with this franchise. I'm even using the word franchise still, which is weird, but using it for this or for the Texas Longhorns who are a blue blood in college football, having this kind of security and growth in the Sarkisian era is a success. I don't think they break the record of 15. Was it Alabama you're talking about? I'm guessing it's Alabama. Has to be.
It's actually Georgia, I'm pretty sure.
Georgia. Like 2022 or something?
It
Wow,
might be
I was
Alabama.
gonna guess Michigan.
I need to figure that out.
Yeah, but like, overall, I'll wrap up this point really quick because we got to go. But yeah, I mean, it's a success for Texas for sure. Just to even be in this conversation of breaking a record. And credit to Steve Sarkisian and Chris Del Conte for building a solid culture, a five-star culture, if you will, noting Matt Campbell's criticism of this team after he beat them in Austin a few years ago. But a five-star culture always would trump five-star talent.
Yeah, it was Georgia back in 2022. So obviously, the NFL draft became 7 rounds in 94. So it hasn't been a super long time, but Georgia did hold the record. I wanted to do something real quick. I'll go through these names that I have right now, and y'all give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down on whether y'all think they're going to get drafted. Quinn Ewers. All right, Joe gave us a thumbs down for a second there. Jake Majors, definitely. Hayden Connor, definitely. Kelvin Banks, easy lock. Cam Williams, easy lock. Gunnar Helm, there. Matthew Golden, easy lock again.
Why did this dude Helm just declare, by the way?
He declared a while back, but he dropped this whole thank you
Oh,
video.
the oh,
Yeah.
okay. Okay.
Um, Isaiah Bond, he's there for sure. Jaden Blue,
I think
I
so.
think so
Guys value speedy backs that are
for
receiving
sure.
backs as well in the modern NFL, for sure. He will get drafted.
I think
That's
him
what
going off in the playoffs was the best thing he could have asked for.
Yeah.
I'm
Protecting the
thinking.
ball too.
Yeah.
He could be like a Alvin Kamara replacement in New Orleans. Very very similar high reception back, not a high volume back out of the backfield. Uh,
Yeah,
I think he's going to get it. Velton Gardner.
man, I don't know. I don't know about that.
It's a really running back heavy draft, and
Elton Gardner.
when you don't play this season, it's tough. It's tough. David Benda.
Honestly, I don't know about that, but he's old and he could be a seventh round pick. I say he can get drafted.
He could. I bet he goes undrafted and signs with the team and then ends up in some type of role. I think he will end up in a role, but I don't know. Alfred Collins,
For sure.
Vernon Broughton for sure.
For sure. Oh, the dog. My
Bill
dog.
Norton, he'll get drafted.
I don't know. I thought his playoff was a little bit shaky after Clemson. I mean, you're banking on potential. He's also
You
not
are.
the he's not necessarily a tall guy, is he, for a DT, right? Noses aren't necessarily supposed to be, towering. We'll see.
He's not. I bet he still gets drafted. It'll be late. It won't
We'll
be
see.
super high. Gavin Holmes,
Nah, bro. I'm sorry, Gavin.
Andrew Makuba,
Yes, for sure.
Maurice Blackwell.
Eh,
Really nice guy. Used to talk to him a lot in the dorm. Really nice guy. Don't think he's gonna get drafted. Um, but yeah, I think there's a really good chance Texas gets 14 guys. They could maybe tie the record if Benda gets drafted or if Gardner gets drafted. Um, but we'll see. We'll see. That'll be a pretty big talking point.
no, for sure. I don't know how. I don't remember a single Gardner carry. Does he even have a carry this year?
No,
Like, it has to be in garbage
I
time. If
think he had
so,
I think he had a carry against either UTSA or ULM.
Colorado State or something.
Yeah, I don't want to prolong this too much longer, but Juan Davis, I don't think he declared. What's next for him? Is
My
he done playing
goat.
football, or is he gonna go try to get undrafted? What's the deal?
Take your talents to the league, my goat.
I don't know. He didn't declare because he was one of the few guys that like was probably like, why would I declare? I'm already graduating. Either the NFL or
Yeah,
bust.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm sure he's going to enter his name into the NFL draft, but he didn't like declare, which honestly just makes me respect him a little bit more. My goat.
Is this officially the last year of Herman recruits? Like officially
It
done?
should
No
be.
more?
It should be. We shouldn't
Helm
have
and
any more.
Davis,
Max Merrill
Hex Merrill.
will
Unreal, these guys are still here, man. Six
Yeah.
him
props to
in
them for sticking around, honestly, but couldn't have done it without these guys for sure. They are just as big of an impact turning over this team in the new era. Yeah, some of the stars. You need some stability, guys who can help change the culture. And you saw that with guys, especially like Gunnar Helm, waiting his turn patiently behind guys like Jatavion Sanders, and it paid off for him. He's gonna be an NFL player.
Absolutely did. With that, y'all, we appreciate y'all as always sticking around and listening. Joe, Robert, fantastic stuff once again. That's going to do it for us here on the 40 Acres Football Podcast. We'll see y'all next week around the same time, talking about, the Arch Manning era and a little bit more of what to expect for the Texas season. We appreciate you as always. We'll see you next week.